Why don't we go ahead and get started? So, I want to thank everyone for joining today's webinar on supercharging dev teams. I'm your host, Steve. I lead growth and marketing here at Educative. And I'm joined by Magda Mew today. So, she is an engineering manager at Adobe in Romania. She is a Google developer expert for Android and a prolific blogger, trainer, public speaker, and digital community organizer. So we're really privileged to have her presence here and her sharing her experiences accelerating dev teams and starting dev teams from scratch. So, what we're going to be covering today are a couple of different key topics. So, leveraging Magda's experience on talking about how to build mobile and platform products with based on her experiences in mobile and Android, as well as like backend services for Adobe, and then her experiences building high performing teams. And her experiences in how you can actually reduce ramp up time for these new teams by up to 65%. And then as a leader in engineering, how do you actually balance, like, say, technical leadership versus people leadership? And so I want to remind everyone that this webinar is going to be recorded. You will get a replay link after today's webinar with links to additional resources. And we're also going to have live Q&A. So there is a separate tab specifically for questions within this Livestorm webinar interface. So make sure you put your questions in the questions tab, and we'll stop and answer questions periodically throughout the webinar. So without further ado, why don't we go ahead and get started? And so first topic here is around, you know, Magda's experience and background in building mobile and platform products. And so, Magda, can you tell us about your experiences up till now, working on like Android, and then also some of your experiences and what you've been working on at Adobe?
Yes, for sure. Thank you. Thank you very much, Steve. And hello, everyone. Happy to be here and also grateful. And I hope that this conversation will be a nice one and a helpful one. And indeed, my background it's in mobile development. I started as an Android developer some time ago. When I started, the current Android version was Android 2.2. So it's a lot of time ago. I was very impressed about the fact that I was capable to write some code and run that code on a mobile phone. So this is what was very catchy for me, and I realized that this is what I want to do. And I did that for about 8 years. I started as an individual contributor. After 6 or 7 years, I started my first mobile team. And I think the moment when I felt that indeed my knowledge in this area it's very it's used in a proper way was when I joined a telecom company from here, from Romania, where I am based. And we started there like a mini startup inside of a big company. And we built the first fully telecom digital subscription from Romania. It was a native mobile app, Android and iOS. And I started with a team. We built that team from scratch, and also the product was new for us. So everything was new, a lot of ambiguity, but it was a nice experience, a very challenging one sometimes, because we started with a 32 pages document where we had the specs and some ideas, and we wanted to transform those ideas in a real native app. And also there it was about scaling the teams and making sure that we are able to accommodate the new requirements by bringing new people inside of our team. And yeah, it was a great experience. And I realized that in that moment, other than managing mobile developers, which was a common thing for me, I had opportunity to extend my team and manage actually a cross-functional team. So that was the moment when I also was exposed to the backend technologies, and my background in mobile development, especially in Java, was very helpful for me because my teams from then worked with Java and Spring. So it was something that was not so exotic for me to say.
Okay, great. And so,
That's pretty much about that part. And at Adobe, what I'm currently doing, I'm an engineering manager. I'm working on Adobe Experience Platform. It's one of the products developed by Adobe, and I'm currently managing two teams, provisioning and observability. It's a total different mindset and setup. Previously, it was about B2C, because that mobile app was used by customers, by people, and here it's about B2B. We are our work it's actually used by other teams inside of Adobe because we are part of this platform team. So we are making sure with on the provisioning side, we are making sure that the resources are properly provisioned in cloud in an automatically way. And on the observability side, we are making sure that the services are working correctly. We are doing the monitoring and alerting for other things. And for sure, it's a different mindset. Here I have only backend developers. We have again Java and Spring, which was a good shift for me because it was not all not the entire technology stack was so new for me, but I also was exposed to other technologies that I with which I didn't work before, like Hashbase or OpenTSDB, or on the Kubernetes side, I was not so exposed before, or on the Azure side, which is the cloud that we are using. So a lot of new things to learn, but also it's nice to be challenged and making sure you get the right combination between new stuff and being able also to use your skills and bring the best from your efforts.
all right, thanks, Magda. So, if you don't mind me asking a couple of questions, like, so when you transitioned from working on Android development and moving to the Adobe team, like you mentioned, completely different, different focus, a little bit more B2B, and then like it was also, and your end users are, other teams, and then you're also working on a backend product versus a mobile application. What were some of the things that you did to quickly adapt to this different architecture and radically different use case and different technologies? How did you evolve?
Yeah, I had something, a moment similar with this one when I joined the telecom company and I was exposed to the cross-functional team. In that moment, indeed, it was not such a big difference. It was only about understanding or being aware about that framework that we are using, also Spring on the back end. But other than that, they use Java, which was the language that I know. And at Adobe, indeed, the change was bigger. And what helped me in this situation was that at that moment, I remember that I talked with one of my mentors. And I told her that I will start learning all those stuff because that's the whole idea. I need to know them because I need to help my team. And she told me, what will happen if you'll change the stack again? We will start learning also those things. Do you think you'll have time? And I realized that that's not really my the area where I could bring the biggest impact. And I should make sure that the people from my teams are very well prepared in those technologies. And my experience in developing apps that were used by real customers, and we had a big number of customers. For example, in the telecom company for Romania, it was a very nice surprise for the market, that application. uh, when you are exposed to these kind of situations, you get some experience. So what I've learned is that it's important to bring the right people in the right places and use their skills. Make sure that they are challenged, make sure that they have the opportunity to grow, because I'm not there to be the smartest person in the room. I'm there just to set up the context for my team and make sure that they are successful. So what I did was to first of all, work to understand architecture. And I think on some parts I'm still learning that. The systems are very complex than I used to work with. And also have a high level understanding. Okay, what is Hashbase? What is OpenTSDB? And try to map that knowledge with what I already have. And get that knowledge from your team members because they are the experts. And make sure you trust them, because if you have them in your team, you should trust them and make sure they have the right information, they have the right tools, and they have your support in order to do their job.
Okay, fantastic. And so, with Adobe, you started this team from scratch, is my understanding, and it also means that you're probably interacting and collaborating with other teams internationally, like in the U.S. and in other countries. So how did you, how do you manage that? Like, that's something that we do. We do quite a bit at Educative, and love to hear some of the best practices that you found to make sure that you're still moving fast, being agile, but at the same time, like there's things like time zone differences. So how do you manage that at Adobe?
Yeah, first of all, I think when I joined Adobe, I learned that I need to have patience. Because when I changed my jobs, I think I had only 2 days off between those two jobs. So I moved from being very active and knowing everything and having a lot of context and a lot of information, and moving somewhere where I don't know exactly what is the Jira link, or I don't know where is the wiki. I don't know anything. So first of all, you need to be aware that it's part of the process. You need to spend some time to learn the stuff. Will not happen by night. Uh, you need to have the enough patience and a structure that will help you to move on. So I think these are the two key things that help us. Having patience, and on this one, it's still challenging sometimes, and making sure we have a structure. And indeed, maybe is also a thing that is specific to me, because I need to have a structure. I need to have a clear process in mind in order to make sure that I'm doing the best. So this is what I try also to do with my team, to making sure that we have some processes, we have a plan in place, we have a roadmap that is clear for us, we have some documentation. And yeah, indeed, there were some challenges, because since we started this team in Romania from scratch, nobody from here knew anything about that project. So it was a lot of about collaboration and making sure you have enough meetings with the US colleagues, and also be aware about the fact that they also are very busy with the roadmap and they are delivering stuff, and they need also to onboard the new team from Romania. So yeah, it was about making sure we calibrate the efforts in the right directions. And we also try to do our best on our time zone and bring to them only specific questions that were very structured in some documents, and have a dedicated meeting when we have enough questions to address in a specific session. So it's, I think, these two elements, patience and structure. And on the structure, it's about multiple things. And I think it's also about adapting them. I mean, if you experiment when you decide to do something, try it and see if it works. If it doesn't work, adapt it or change it or just remove it. But all the time, try to search what is the right approach for you in that context. And be aware about the fact that sometime, or maybe in 3 months, that setup will not be the right one. And be open to change it.
Got it. Okay. And there are a couple of frameworks that I think you leveraged. I think when we were preparing for this, you mentioned the LESS and then also GRPI frameworks to kind of like help you navigate this. So can you take us through what those frameworks are and how you utilize them?
Yes. So this one, LESS, it's coming from Large Scale Scrum. And this one was very helpful for me on the telecom company. When I joined that company, I got one cross-functional team. The project was very important for the company. It was something new on the Romania market, and we wanted to make sure that we deliver the best quality to our customers, and we also bring the features that we know that also from based on the research and also based on the type of the product we delivered, will be used and very helpful for our customers. So in order to make sure that we keep this velocity and we are able to deliver more features, we decide to scale the teams and bring 2 new teams. Now the challenge was to how to manage that work. It was a specific setup. We had 3 different product owners, the same product backlog. We already used Scrum, and we wanted to bring 2 new teams. We don't know exactly how to put them on the roadmap or where to add them, but we just need to find a way to do that. And this is how I discovered Less. Actually, I did a research before choosing this framework, and I tried to identify what are the options in terms of scaling teams. Actually, in terms of scaling agile teams, because we use Scrum, it was not by the book. I don't know if it's the case in these days to have someone who is using by the Scrum by the book. It was not our objective. Our main objective was to deliver that product and making sure we put it on the market as soon as possible. So what I've done, I tried to find some frameworks that could map to our context, so we could scale the teams from 1 to 3. And I discovered Safe, which was too heavy for what we needed, Less, and Nexus. And I did actually a decision process there. I applied the decision process. I validated it also with my managers, with the agile coach, and other people who are knowledgeable in this area. And we realized that the best option for us is Less. And the main idea is that it's very helpful because we already used Less. And what we have done was that we used this framework, and actually we focus more on its guidelines, because this is also what we liked about it, because it was not very prescriptive. It has some guidelines, it has some principles that resonated with our mindset. So what's the idea with Less is that you have a common product backlog. You could have multiple product owners that are handling different features or different roadmap items. And the process is similar to Scrum, but you just make some meetings twice. What does it mean? It means that you have the sprint planning and sprint refinement first done with the product owners, some representative people from each team, and the Scrum Masters. So they decide together on which feature each team will focus on. And after that, they do the regular refinement and planning meetings, normal stuff. So you just have these preparation meetings, the refinement and the planning one that is done above the other normal plannings and refinements, to make sure that you set up this team will work on this feature, this team will work on this feature, and this team will work on the other one. And each feature has its own product owner. After that, each team gets that feature, start working on it. And at the end of the sprint, they have retrospective meetings per team, and one with the representative from the teams to also calibrate the entire process. The sprint review is done together. And after that, you start a new iteration. So, and this was something that was properly, it was a match for us in that moment. And we started using it. And we also enjoy the technical excellence, for example, principle from this framework that was in match with our expectations of continuous improvement, continuous integration, and making sure we deliver the right quality to our clients. It was also about how they see the manager. They see it like a teacher and like a person who helped the team to know how to solve problems. We really resonate with this one, and it worked.
Okay, thanks. So we've got a couple questions that have come in, and one question from Chirag. And I think through your experiences, starting new teams and international teams, and then perhaps maybe in the context of this Less framework, is have you ever been in a situation where the roadmap for a big project isn't clear, but you're asked to make progress on that. And, how do you navigate that? And I think, one of the challenges is navigating ambiguity, especially as a leader.
Yeah.
Hopefully Magda's still there.
Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yes, we don't see you, but
Oh,
if we can hear you, that's
okay. I hope I will be back.
we can hear you.
Okay. So yeah, usually in this industry, it's about a lot of ambiguity. And here I'm triggered by the psychological safety concept, because one of the recommendations to have a psychological safety environment in your team, it's about making sure you are aware about the fact that you are doing some challenging stuff, and mapping the work as a learning experience, because if it's a lot of complexity, and there are a lot of things that should be covered. And then indeed it's a common scenario, this one, to get an ambiguous roadmap. In this situation, what you can do is to see what are the tools that you have next to you, or what are the people who are next to you. Do you have a product owner? Do you have a product manager that could help you with that? That's the first thing. The second thing is if you don't have that, and for example, in my setup in Adobe, we don't have a product owner in our team. We have some product managers that they somehow offer us guidance, or making sure that we are aware about the priorities, or what are the features that are coming from our clients, if it's the case. But if you don't have such a person in your team, you should make sure that you have a definition of done, and at least understand what are the expectations in these terms, to say that something is done, and who will use that thing that you are developing, and make sure that you are in sync with those people. Maybe it's something that is developed inside, like we are doing some APIs that are called by other teams. Be in touch with those teams and try to collect the information. So if you are not able to put someone else, a product owner or a product manager, to do that thing, usually the manager together with the team start working on that. And it happens also to get an engineering roadmap item, and you start working on it and trying to understand what's the purpose of it, understand the big picture, and start discussing with other teams, and trying to create some stories that on which the team could work on them in the following time.
Okay.
I
All
hope
right, let's
it
take
helps.
one more quick question. Yeah, great answer, and thank you for that. So we'll take one more quick question, and before we keep moving on. So Dharam asked one question. He said he heard 3 frameworks evaluated. I think you mentioned less, safe, and then what was the
Nexus.
third one? Was it Nexus?
Yeah,
Nexus.
exactly.
Okay. All right. Great. All right. So let's move on to this other framework that you relied on, GRPI. So take us through this.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this framework. And I found it very helpful because it offered me a structure. When I joined Adobe, I realized that other than understanding the product, I need to also build a team, because at the beginning I got 3 people. After that, I increased the size of the team and there were 5. Right now I'm in total 15 people in 3 teams. But in order to have a team, you need to build it. And for sure, I want it, and I continue to want having high-performing teams. And I found this framework very useful because it offered me some guidance about what are the checks on which I should work, other than being mindful, being next to them and help them to grow and so on, and doing my job as a manager. And this framework is not new. It's from 17s, I think, when I search about it. It's called GRPE. It's about goals, roles, procedures, and interpersonal relationship. And I started with the goals. First of all, we clarified what is our mission, what is our team mission, to understand why we are here, why we get our salaries. and what is the reason or the North Star that motivate us and keep us united. Other than having this mission, we are also getting some goals that are somehow actually they are coming from the business or from the top leadership, and we need to find a way to achieve those things inside of the team and also at an individual level. We also work to make sure that each team member has an individual development plan, because I want to understand better what's their career. I mean, what they want to achieve in their career and how could I help them. And here it's about technical stuff, but also about people stuff, because after a specific seniority level, it's not only about tech things; it's about people skills. And this was very helpful to understand exactly where you want to go, the goals. After that, we had some roles. By roles, for example, we are using Scrum, but we are using a flavor specific to our team. We have a Scrum Master per sprint, because we wanted to make sure that it's not so overwhelming experience. And because in my case, I don't have a product owner in my team, this is the setup in my organization. And I realized that I get features that involve a lot of synchronization with other teams, involve system design, involve writing stories. I tried to understand what could be done, and I created a role which is called Empower Driver. And this person is like a feature lead, brings the information about the feature, but the entire work is done by for that feature is done by entire team. So it's about roles, procedures. It's about, I don't know, definition of done, definition of ready, coding guidelines, how we use Jira, what is our branching strategy, how we make deploys, how it looks the CI/CD pipeline, everything related to how we do the work. And interpersonal relationship was about making sure that I'm aware about the needs from my team and try to address them. And we talked about how to give and receive feedback. We have workshops about psychological safety. We have team events. So everything related to this part of interpersonal relationships. And
Okay.
it was very helpful because I applied for my first team. And when I got a new team, I applied the same model.
Got it. Okay, so that kind of leads us into our next topic around, how you've built high performing teams, and so can you take us through like your experiences and how you applied these principles to create like these vibrant teams, and then also this will start talking about like how you actually start onboarding and building that team and get them productive and getting them with delivering high velocity in a short period of time.
Yeah, so by using that GRPE model, we actually started to have some structure, and we understand exactly what are our processes. And by doing that, we also started to improve the onboarding process. And this helped a lot because we understood better what were our challenges when we got onboarded. We added extra documentation on the technical side. We added this documentation about how we work, because actually those processes, it's about how we work and how we deliver a value. And by doing that in a continuous way, each time a new team member joined us, we shared that documentation with them, and they were able to provide us feedback. And by doing that, at the beginning, I think the first team members that joined us, they took about 3 months or maybe 4 until they. So our onboarding, well, let's put it this way, our onboarding took about 6 months. After 6 months, we were able to say that we understand a little bit the architecture. We are able to do on call, and we are able to bring new features on the system. We improve it by 4 months on the next iteration of people who joined our team. And right now, in order to get ready for on-call process, it takes 2 months. So we reduced a lot the process, and this happened in an iterative way. We are having a wiki page with all the process. We start explaining what is Adobe, what are the business areas. After that, we describe AEP because we are part of Adobe Experience Platform, and you need to understand the environment where you work. And after that, we make zoom in on our specific project. And there we are making sure we cover all the aspects. Plus, we have a planner with some tasks for each week. So everything is pretty well organized, and getting feedback each time will help us a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so let's actually dive into that a little bit. And so, you came up. We have at Educative, this concept of, learning paths,
Mm-hmm.
but it turns out that you have that concept within Adobe. So you talked about some of those different resources, but
Yeah.
let's dive into learning. Like, what is your definition of a learning path, and what do those things look like?
Yeah, I found a very nice and very helpful project inside Adobe. It's a project developed by the Romania site. It's called Engineering Enablement. And this project, it's about involving principal scientists, architects, engineering managers, usually the most senior people and the more knowledgeable people from the company, involve them in creating learning paths and document them in the wiki. Um, Plus, we have some trainings that each new hire should cover, and they are also prepared by these knowledgeable people. And on this part on the engineering enablement, it's about having some learning paths for technologies that we are using in Adobe Experience Platform, actually in digital experience. So if you want to learn more about Java, you have a dedicated list of resources that were validated by very knowledgeable people. So it's about learning the technology stack from our company. This is a track. And the second track is related to the solutions that are specific to Adobe. We have some specific software that we are using. We are having some specific things when we talk about technical excellence or operational readiness. So if you want to learn more on those things, and usually part of the onboarding, you need to do that, you have also a learning path prepared by these people. So I found it very useful because usually in the past, I was the person responsible to bring these learning paths and try to search the greatest resources. And sometimes maybe I don't have enough experience, maybe in Scala or Jenkins or anything else. So this way you are making sure that you are reviewing and learning from resources that are validated and that are the best for that scenario.
Got it. And so what I'm hearing is that these learning paths are a combination of, say, like core skills, to say like you need to learn, perhaps a specific language. But another part of this learning plan is just like how things get done, or how you get things done, like say within Adobe or for your specific team. And that, like you mentioned, there's like processes around certain tools,
Mm-hmm, exactly.
and then like your tech stack internally. Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And I think you mentioned that, this is a combination of like, links to, say external resources, but you
Mm-hmm.
also utilized things like wikis and Confluence. Can you talk about like how you utilize those tools to create these learning paths internally?
Yeah, so this engineering enablement program, these learning paths are documented in the wiki. You have some dedicated pages for Java, for technology stack, or for a role. We also have, for example, a path for DevOps, or if you are engineering manager, what you should know. And usually those links are going to other resources. Usually, for example, at Adobe, you have free access to some platforms like O'Reilly or LinkedIn Learning. And we are able to get these links directly to those platforms on which we already have free access. Or as a manager, it's very helpful to have, for example, we are having Harvard Managed Mentor, which is a very nice platform for learning. And another nice touch, it's really regarding the fact that these resources usually are a combination between books, trainings, videos. So it's a combination of learning styles. If you enjoy more reading, or if you want to also read and have a workshop or something more hands-on, you are able to combine the information, so you can make sure that you covered properly that information. And we also have resources to, or actually links to sessions organized by people from Adobe that talked about those topics. So, and you are able to learn and also see that, yeah, this person is very knowledgeable on this area, and I could search that person on Slack and get in touch and get more information about that topic.
Got it. Okay. Excellent. And so we've got a couple questions that have come in around this concept of learning paths. So a question from Daniel is that, so documentation as part of onboarding. So who was involved? I think you might have answered this, but it's worth repeating. So who was involved in writing the documentation? And, did you have challenges convincing other people about the value of, writing the documentation and creating these learning paths?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Regarding the documentation, it was a team effort. I also enjoy a lot writing documentation, but the team did the technical part. Most of the technical part was documented by my colleagues. And in this situation was very easy to convince them, because they struggled during their onboarding, and they saw how difficult it is when you don't get the enough documentation, or you don't know where to search it, or you need to check with someone and make sure that you know where it is, that documentation. Indeed, we had a lot of knowledge sharing sessions and a lot of information at the beginning, and we had a lot of support from our US colleagues. But they feel the need to see it in a specific way, structured. So this was a good reason for them to be involved more on this process. And also part of our definition of done is writing documentation. So we are big fans of it, and they noticed also how helpful was for them, and it's how helpful it's also for someone when someone is coming to you and ask you what is the diagram of your architecture, or where I could find some knowledge from some recordings about your services, or where is your definition of done? How does it look? We want to do something similar, and we are curious to learn more about how you are doing that. And in terms of engineering enablement, there it's about involving people from the company. It was more, I think, on that project was already done when I joined Adobe, but there are a lot of people in Adobe who are eager to share their knowledge, and they are eager to help. So it's like a community project, let's call it Adobe Romania Community Project.
Got it. So it sounds like this does require, it requires buy-in from everyone, not only like people on the team to commit to contributing to that, but then also like from leadership as well. Is that would you say so?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, you could model that behavior. And what I've done, I was trying to facilitate this process. I created a skeleton, a structure of the how it should look, the documentation. I tried to make it very catchy with emojis and stuff like that. And they started to fill in the spaces, and it helped that one. And yeah, it's a process. It takes some time. I realize that it's not an easy one, because usually the engineers, they enjoy a lot writing code and they want to do only that. But other than that, it's also their way to expose their work. It's also their way to improve their writing skills, because when you are writing documentation, you are trying to put on a wiki page what
Mm-hmm.
on which have you worked the last month, or maybe the last 3 or 6 months. So it's also a way to show your work, because that wiki will be very easily found by other colleagues.
Right. Okay. And Raju has I think a really, really good question about this. So, how do you actually deal with information getting obsolete or degrading over time, in these learning paths and in these documents?
On the learning paths, this initiative was directed by the VP from Romania, our engineering lead, and he also have another person who is right now a business director, Miha, and she is very careful with this stuff, and I'm sure that she keeps them updated, the information. In our case, what we have done lately is to try to have an approach more oriented to documentation as a code. You are writing the code, you are writing the tests, you are also including the documentation or the updates to the documentation that is already in the Git repo. And on the PR, you are able to check three things: the code, the test, and the documentation. So this way, you are able to keep it as much as possible up to date. It's still work in process. We are still combining the wiki pages with this approach, but for sure this is where we want to go on documentation as a code and making sure that it's part of the writing, it's part of the development umbrella. I mean, when you have a story to finish or a feature to implement, you need to write the code, you need to write the tests, and you need to have also documentation.
Got it. Okay. And you mentioned earlier that reducing the ramp up time from like 6 months for developers down and team members from 6 months down to about 2 months. Where do you think? I mean, obviously, like the efficiencies are, like the developer can read the documentation, and perhaps there's less overhead for the manager to try to and other team members to do like a brain dump and schedule meetings. But from your perspective, like where do those time savings come from? Is it those things, or what are the other things that that reduce that time by 4 months?
Mm-hmm. There are a lot of things that happen. I mean, what I've mentioned, it's are some categories actually, and each time we try to improve it. I think that's the main idea, to keep up improving the process. For example, what else we have? We have a script. We have an onboarding script, and based on that script, usually on that script is created by the manager and by the onboarding body. Each time a new colleague will join the team, we'll have an onboarding body. The onboarding body is already trained. I have a small guide about how to be a good onboarding body, and they know exactly what they should do or what their area of responsibility and so on. And after we decide, okay, we have this new hire, I assign an onboarding body, and we meet together. I'm meeting with the onboarding body and review the script. We already have a version, but all the time we try to keep it as much as possible updated. And that script actually plan the work per weeks. And the new hire also have a planner with some tasks per week: first week, first month, first 3 months. My initial setup was indeed that after 3 months to be able to start the on-call. The fact that we achieve 2 months, and right now, honestly, I have a colleague who joined in March, and we are in 6th of April, and next week he will start on call. So I think we are better than I expected. And so they have that planner with the tasks. It offers some structure, because when you get a new project, you are in a new team, you don't know from where to start. You get the documentation, but on which things should I focus? So we offer these priorities. We offer the structure. They have some things to do in the first week, some things to do in the first month, some things to do in the first 3 months. And they are related to that script. And here it's a combination of having meetings with Romanian people, having meetings with the US colleagues, checking some recordings for this service, checking these wiki pages for this service, then move on to the next one, then move on to the third one, and so on until you cover those things. In the third week, maybe you start also learning about our processes and understand better how we do the things. And that's the whole idea. Having this script helps us a lot. because we are able to also have an onboarding experience improved for the new hire. And in that planner, at the end of each column, they have a card where they could add their feedback. Please add your feedback here regarding how was the past week, the past month, and so on. We also have, for example, a shared document where they could add their technical questions to make sure that we collect enough, and after that organize meetings. So there are a lot of small things that help us to achieve this thing.
Got it. Okay. Thanks, Magda. So let's move on to the last topic, and that's around balancing technical versus versus people leadership, and how you strike that balance as a leader. So, like, the first question I have for you is that you mentioned earlier that you can't, and it's impossible for you to be kind of like a master of all the different technologies. You need to rely on the team. But from your perspective, and in your role, what do you think are kind of like the top disruptive technologies you're seeing like on the horizon, that you either need to get smarter about enough to say like, hey, we should be considering features utilizing this, or things that you just find like personally fascinating?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a pretty interesting topic here, and it's a lot of there are a lot of things to cover. For sure, I think almost everyone right now they are hyped with generative AI, and also my colleagues are trying to find some scenarios that could be applied for that one, and sometimes it's difficult, sometimes not so difficult. Um, and yeah, that area it's interesting, and my colleagues are very very curious about it. What I can say is that the technology will change over and over again, and I like to see it like a tool that is helping us to achieve some objectives. I hope I work to have this mindset, because indeed other roles, and I must to confess that I have moments when I feel overwhelmed about the stuff that my team is doing, or the technology stack that they are using, and I'm aware that I don't know how Prometheus works so well on the background, and how we could optimize it, and if you are able to shard Prometheus table, I don't know, this kind of stuff. And sometimes I'm also trying to be courageous and ask these questions, and not feel and without working to not feel so stupid. But yeah, I want to see this technology stuff like a tool that help us to achieve some objectives, and these objectives could be building some products for bringing creativity to the people, like it's our mission at Adobe, or building tools that improve the life of people with challenges, health challenges. So it's I think it's more about understanding what you want to do, and uh, clarify that thing, and after that try to search the right technology for you.
Okay, fantastic. And I have there's a question from Daniel, and hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. And their question is a little bit specific here, but their question is, for a small team that's scaled up to up to 40 engineers across the different product lines in the company following sprints, you know, they're having the engineers log their hours on Jira might push a sense of micromanagement. So, do you think that's essential to drive decisions like capacity planning, or how do or maybe the better question is like, how do you do capacity planning for for engineering tasks?
Mhm. I think here how I see the things, and this is my perspective. It depends a lot how that business is organized. For example, if you because there are different kind of companies. There are some companies who have their own employees, and then like tech companies, and they do their job. They have their own employees. They are working on those products, and it's in their control. There are some companies who have their own employees, but they also hire people from other companies to help them on some areas. And they do consultancy. And in that case, maybe, or I don't know, I'm not a specialist in financial stuff, but they need to have a capacity planning, because usually the financial people ask you about that. How much money you will need in the next quarter to pay the people who brought from other companies. And in that case, sometimes you need to find some ways to solve and give an answer to that question. What I've tried to do, for example, here at Adobe, it's where we are working, and we are working to have a velocity. We have estimates, and we check these estimates. Indeed, it's challenging, especially when the teams are changing. I mean, when a new person is joining the team, the velocity will not be relevant. Your previous velocity will not be relevant. But this thing helped me. I mean, we tried to do was to see after 4 or 5 sprints what is our velocity, and based on that to do the roadmap planning. And for example, the past year I did that, and I had an Excel spreadsheet with some scenarios, because in that moment I had too many priorities, and I didn't know exactly how to put them on the roadmap, in which order. And I try to create different scenarios. If we start with this one and continue with this one and paralyze on this one, what will happen? And try to run some scenarios and see which is the right one, also for business and also for the team. This year was not so difficult, especially for H1. On the H2, right now we are doing the planning and updating the roadmap. Was not so difficult, but the past year that approach helped me.
Got it. Excellent. I see that we do have a couple questions, additional questions. However, we are running out of time, but we commit to following up on all of these questions either offline or in a blog post within the next couple of days when we do post the replay. So I think if you're interested in learning more about engineering leadership and engineering management, we do have at Educative a whole series of courses, dozens of courses. Some of the examples titles are here around becoming an effective software manager, agile, soft skills around like being an inspirational manager, as well as core skills around like say things like system design. And if you can either check out educative.io/interview or just browse the courses. And another thing about our courses is that they are fully interactive, so you can actually start coding directly within the browser itself, and alongside the code, so you don't have to do any setup or anything like that, and immediately get started. So I encourage you to check that out. We'll have links to all of these things at the end when we do a follow-up email for everyone that registered. So you'll get the on-demand replay, as well as an opportunity to win an annual personal subscription to Educative if you sign up for a free trial. And then also we have free trials if you visit our enterprise page if you want to get Educative for Teams. So if you want to be able to get access to all this within your workplace and covered by your employer. And there's some additional workflow tools as well as learning path tools in Educative to support a lot of the things that Magda mentioned, and also to accelerate onboarding and velocity within your teams. So I encourage you to check those out. And I mentioned that we will have links to all of those things as well. So as we end today's conversation, I really want to thank Magda for sharing your expertise, joining this call late at night. I think it's evening in Romania. And if you found value in this, please pass along your thanks to Magda in the chat, and perhaps we can chat again sometime.
Thank you for having me. Hope it was helpful.
Great. All right. And to everyone who joined us, thank you so much for joining. Join us next time. And we enjoyed doing this with you, and we'll continue doing it. Thanks. All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.